jump into a little bit of baseball talk. MLB Price Check, and we got to welcome in our standard crew. We got Nick Friar, Matt Meiselman, a couple of DraftKings contributors, Erik Halterman from RotoWire. Guys, good to see all of you. Let's, I guess, skip the pleasantries from there and dive right in. We need pitchers 8K or above. Nick, you got a solid, dozen to choose from. Who do you like best?
There are a lot of guys, and I know Lance McCullers is going to be very appealing, but I'm not going to go and give you guys the number one high-priced pitcher tonight, as much as there's a lot of upside against the Mariners. I'm actually looking at Sandy Alcantara at 8.5K going up against the Orioles, and I know his swinging strike rate has dipped a bit this month, and of course, do you think the strikeouts have dipped with that as well? And they have. But he's going up against an Orioles lineup that has a very high swinging strike rate. I mean, swinging strike rate against right-handed pitchers this season and K rate against right-handed pitchers. They actually have one of the worst plate appearances per strikeout rates against right-handed pitchers this month. They're in the top 10 in that category. So I think that we're going to see a little bump in the right direction for him, where that's kind of where strikeouts have slowed down a little bit of late.
However, single-digit fantasy points, 3 out of his last 4 starts. That part not as good, maybe a bounce back tonight. What do you think, Erik?
Yeah, my favorite guy in this category is Kenta Maeda at 8,200 against the Tigers, who are actually a better offense than I thought, but they're still 18th by WRC+. Definitely not a unit we have to be at all scared of, even if they're not quite a true bottom-tier team. But Maeda is an interesting one. I think he probably is the guy, more or less, that he was through 2019. He had a 3.87 ERA and a 26.4% strikeout rate in his first, I think that's 4 years in the league. He had more or less the best 11-start stretch of his life last year, a 2.70 ERA. That strikeout rate shot up north of 32%, which got everybody excited. And then he promptly turned around and had maybe one of the worst 12-start stretches of his career to start this year, with his ERA shooting up to 5.56 and his strikeout rate dropping by more than 11 points. But thus far in July, in 4 starts, 2.35 ERA, a strikeout rate of 36%. So he's looking a lot like he did last year. I don't expect that for him to stick around, but he's been, a solidly above average starter for most of his career. And I think that's all he needs to be to justify this 8,200 price. And if he stays the same guy he's been for the rest of July, I think he's $1,000 or $2,000 too cheap.
Yeah, and typically a threat for 17, 18 fantasy points. So hopefully we can get 2x value on that. Matt, what do you think?
So I talked yesterday about how the slate was an unusual one, at least for me, where I liked the expensive pitchers and didn't really like the cheap ones very much. Today, it's back to normal. I think the cheaper pitchers are better, so I'm not that excited to play the high-priced guys. But I actually do think Kenta Maeda is the best call here. And I kind of feel like he should just be the most expensive pitcher for this slate because the matchup is just so good. And like Erik said, he's been much better lately. So I have a lot of confidence in Maeda. My concern really is just that I think he'll be the most popular player on this entire slate. So for that reason, I'm just not really that into it because I think there is downside for him. But for cash games, for sure, I think he's an easy call. For GPPs, I probably just want to play cheaper guys. But if I have to pick an expensive one, I think Maeda is the best guy to go with.
I'm just relieved nobody went with Garrett Richards. It's been a rough road recently, obviously, for him, especially against Toronto. All right, let's go hitters, 5K and above, and we'll go right back to you, Matt. What do you think?
So the theme for me normally is that I want really good hitters that are maybe just a bit overpriced where their ownership stays down. And I think Soto could be in that category. I think Ohtani could be there, although he may sit after pitching in last night's game. But the guy that I'm most interested in playing is Fernando Tatis. It's just there are shortstops that cost less than him that I think will be a lot more popular. So you have Trey Turner's a little bit cheaper, and Xander Bogaerts, even though they're going against Robbie Ray in Boston, the Red Sox did really well against Ray last time. So I think Bogaerts could be popular too. It's really just that Tatis is a great player. He plays a premium position at shortstop, which it's hard to get a lot of offense from. He's the favorite for NL MVP, and I think he could be 3% owned for tournaments or something like that for the slate tonight. So it's just anytime you can get a player of this caliber, I mean, I don't have to go through the stats of just how good Tatis is as an offensive player. He's incredible. He's one of the best players in the league. And if you get him as a contrarian option, that's a rare occurrence. James Kaprielian is fine. He's probably average-ish, but I think Tatis can definitely do really well. It's not like this is a hard matchup. And at low ownership, yeah, I think he may end up being my favorite guy to pay up for on the slate.
Got to pay up to do it, obviously. Third most expensive hitter on the slate. Nick, how about you?
Well, I like Bryce Harper coming into this, but he's up on that 6K range. I think he's at 6.1K tonight. He's going up against a guy that he's hit 4 home runs against in his career. But I'm actually going to stick with Nelson Cruz tonight at 5.7K as my top hitter over 5K. And this is a guy, of course, who we've seen in this range a lot. He's a popular play for all of us on this show. But I think this price is a little bit higher than I've seen from him for most of the season. He's going up against Jordan Montgomery tonight, who actually hasn't seen yet in his career. Montgomery has had a solid month, but I like Cruz too much against left-handed pitching. I think everybody knows how good he is. I mean, this season he's got a 10-10 OPS against lefties, 6 home runs, 7 doubles. And the other thing is he hasn't had a shot at left-handed pitching for the Rays yet. And I know he's already got a couple home runs, like 14 plate appearances for the Rays since he got there. So kind of a little bit of an intangible thrown in there, but his first shot at left-handed pitching, like this is one of the big reasons why the Rays would want to have him on their roster. So I expect him to have a big night against Montgomery.
Cruz homered 2 out of his last 3, so welcome to Tampa. What do you say, Eric?
Yeah, I'm looking to get some Marlins in against Spencer Watkins at Camden Yards, one of the more hitter-friendly parks in the league. Spencer Watkins, a 28-year-old rookie who has an ERA of 1.65, but that's in 4 appearances. His FIP is north of 4. His xFIP's north of 5. He doesn't strike guys out. He doesn't avoid walks, and he really doesn't keep the ball on the ground at 26.8% ground ball rate. Unfortunately, there aren't a lot of elite Marlins, but I do like Starling Marte at 5,300. Not a huge power bat, although he does have some pop, and in a place like Camden Yards against a pitcher who can't keep the ball on the ground, he could certainly clear the fence. He's a great contact hitter still, outperforming his expected stats by a decent amount, but his speed means that that's something that we think probably could keep happening. He really is, I think, the best base stealer in the league this year. He has 21 steals, which is 4 back of Whit Merrifield, but he's played in 35 fewer games. If he played the same number of games as Merrifield and kept that same pace up, he'd actually be leading the entire league by 8 steals. He's also swinging a very hot bat lately, 6 multi-hit games in his last 9, hitting .459 with 4 steals over that stretch. I think this is an ideal time to roster Starling Marte.
23 points last time out against the Padres. Pretty good. Nick, all right, we need a value bet.
So I'm going to go with Dylan Carlson tonight at 2.9K. For me, this is too good to pass up, and I don't need to know much more than the fact that in his 3 of his last 7 games, he's gotten 18-plus DK fantasy points. In his last 4 games, he has 2 home runs and 2 doubles. He's going up against a guy in Cal Quantrill tonight that I know he's done well in his last 2 starts, but I'm not very high on him. So at 2.9K, Carlson is too cheap for me to just at least not take a flyer on.
Yeah, 18 points, 26 in the rear view as well. Some good solid games, obviously. Eric, value bet for you.
Yeah, I like Austin Riley at 3,700 against some pitcher from the Mets. We don't actually know who at the moment. It's Anthony Banda is listed as the expected starter, but he just threw 2 innings last night. Might just be a bullpen day. It seems like all their real starters are locked in the next few days. So Austin Riley against, full game worth of relievers seems like a good bet to me. He's been particularly hot over his last 4 games, 8 for 17 with a pair of homers, but really all season he's becoming the guy that he's supposed to be. Hadn't really done much before this year. Just an 87 WRC plus is not what you want from a guy who's supposed to be a corner slugger, offense only kind of guy. But he's just 24 this year, so the fact that it took him a bit of time to figure things out shouldn't worry us too much. He struck out a ton as a rookie. He actually slashed that strikeout rate by nearly 13 percentage points last season, and he's kept it low this year while also walking more than he ever has before. He's not necessarily an elite power bat yet, but he's a pretty good one, slugging .490, which is more or less exactly at his expected slugging percentage. And I think that's more than enough to justify a price south of $4,000.
Yeah, and you won't get too many third basemen at that price point with a 7.5-point average as well. What do you say, Matt?
My pick is basically the whole Cincinnati Reds team. If I have to pick a guy, it's Jesse Winker. He's their best hitter right now with Nick Castellanos out. But this seems like a spot where we could actually get low ownership for a team that's significantly underpriced because this is a 15-game slate. There's a lot of value bats to have. Eloy Jimenez is still in the 2000s. He just came back off the IL. There's the Marlins. There's the Red Sox Blue Jays game. I think there's just a lot of spots that people will gravitate towards, and the Reds will be an afterthought. Also, because the Cubs on the opposite side of the game should be one of the more popular teams tonight. The Reds are a decent-sized underdog, but they're just so underpriced, and I think Adbert Alzolay is fine. And part of the problem with the Reds is just they've been bad. And Eugenio Suarez in particular, I almost picked him as like the guy to single out, but he has a WRC plus in the 60s this year, and it's in the 30s with men on base. It's insane how bad he's been, but his track record throughout his career has just been so much better that at a certain point, you probably expect him to just start hitting. That's why I'm going with Winker, though, because I'm not that confident in it. But I just think everyone on the Reds will be pretty low owned, and they're all cheap, so you can fit them pretty easily as a stack. So that's my spot.
DFS is fun, but you know what? So is the DK Sportsbook, Nick. I know you've been combing, you've been looking through all the odds available for baseball tonight. Give me your favorite MLB bet.
Well, the Astros left me frustrated last night, but I'm still going to go back to their series against the Mariners. I mentioned Lance McCullers before, and I'm going to go with the over on his strikeout prop. It's set at 6.5. The Mariners have the highest K rate against right-handed pitching all season. Last night, you look at what they did against Garcia. As much as they got, was it 5 or 6 runs off of him? He still got 9 strikeouts over 4 2/3 innings. And McCullers' swinging strike rate is a tick above his season average, which has been solid 11.6 for the season. So I feel confident that he's going to get at least 7 punch outs tonight against the Mariners.
Matt, you have a favorite?
Yeah, I'm going to have to hold my nose for this one because the bet that I'm looking at is the strikeout prop on Matt Moore, which is at 3.5. Matt Moore is bad. Like, there's absolutely no question about that. But even in his last start where he gave up a grand slam in the 3rd inning, he gave up 6 runs for the game, he still went 96 pitches and made it through 6 innings. And for a while there, the Phillies were just using him as kind of like an opener and maybe just a depth guy to pitch a few innings. But now his leash is actually a lot longer. So at 3.5 strikeouts, like, as long as he doesn't get knocked out of the game early, he should have a good shot to hit the over there. Yeah, he definitely can get knocked out of the game early, but kind of like I mentioned with Mike Minor yesterday, the Nationals offense that he's facing is similar to the White Sox offense, where you have elite hitters at the top and then just a lot of bad hitters at the bottom. So there is opportunity for strikeouts. He obviously gets to face a pitcher, but I think 4, 5, 6 strikeouts, if he stays in the game long enough, he can do it. And I think that he's a lot more likely to stay in the game now than he had been, over the last few weeks.
Eric, take this segment home.
Yeah, I'm looking at Giants at plus 105 over the Dodgers. I liked it a little bit more. I think last night it was plus 115, but I still like it here. We actually just had this exact same pitching matchup, Julio Urias versus Logan Webb, last Wednesday, with the Giants winning that one. And I think both of these pitchers are trending in opposite directions. Julio Urias, you may not be able to tell from his ERA. He had a 3.95 ERA through the end of June and a 2.45 ERA in July. But if you look at some of the ERA estimators, like XFIP, for example, he's nearly a run and a half worse in July because his strikeout rate has cratered 28.4% through the end of June, just 19.4% thus far in July. And I think we should see Urias fading down the stretch. He's thrown 119 innings this year, blows past his 78 between the regular season and playoffs last season. It's nearly his career high of 127.2 innings that he set 5 years ago. So workload concerns have always been the story with him, and I think they're about to get quite real. Logan Webb, on the other hand, didn't really do much before this year, 5.36 ERA in 94 innings, but he's down at 3.45 or 3.54 this season with the ERA estimators even below that. He's an elite ground ball guy among pitchers who've thrown at least 60 innings. He's 60.6% ground ball rate, trails only Framber Valdez, and he combines that with a strikeout rate that's a bit above league average too. And so given that the Giants offense has basically been as good as the Dodgers all year this year, and with Webb pitching better and Urias pitching worse, I actually think the Giants should be slight favorites.